Hello BookTube. So I have just now finished reading Liberation Day, which is the opening story from the new short story collection Liberation Day by George Saunders. Saunders is my favorite author of short stories. I have read most of his collections and he is, I think, unbeaten. He is the king of the short story format. He also happens to write in a style and in a series of genres that I particularly connect to and click with. And he grapples with some themes and with some subject matter that I have always found particularly interesting and incredibly relevant. So this is not going to be really a review. I think in order to really review George Saunders' work, this would have to be like a 2-hour long video with a lot of effort and thought put into it, and I don't want to do it right now. Maybe sometime in the future, but right now I just want to make this short video just to recommend it to you, to anyone watching this, because something that really hurts me is that, you know, these voices like Saunders not getting the attention that I think they deserve. So I just want to, you know, hopefully persuade you watching to pick this book or any other book by George Saunders up and, you know, just marvel at what he does, because he really is the king of this type of short stories. So Liberation Day is the title of the short story collection, but the story in question that I am mentioning, that I just finished reading just like 2 minutes ago before making this video, was Liberation Day. That's also the title of the story. So it's a big deal because, you know, it's the story that gives the collection its title, and it's also the opening story in the collection. So it's really setting the reader up in terms of what to expect from the collection. Now, this is the only story so far that I have read in the collection, but boy, oh boy, this is by far, and I am not being dramatic or exaggerated, although I can be incredibly dramatic and overreactive. That's just usually who I am, but I don't think I am over exaggerating things by saying that this short story, Liberation Day, is the best thing I've read this year. Yes, this is February, so that doesn't amount to much, but wow, this short story, Liberation Day, was just, it was absolutely superb. It is absolutely stunning. This has to be one of the best things that I will have read by the end of the year. Man, this is exactly why I love George Saunders' writing. This is exactly why I love this man. Everything that I have loved previously about him is here, and I will tell you about all of those things in a second. But this story, it's not very short. It's 61 pages long, but it just flies. It's so enthralling and engaging and unputdownable, but at the same time, he gives you so much in that little package. It's a condensated form of so many things. It really is a masterclass in short format, or you know, it's short format writing. I mean, this is just, it's every single sentence, every single word has been expertly chosen and crafted and precisely selected. It's so wonderful to read, you know, something so greatly written. I will not tell you what the story is about. I will not even tell you the basic premise, because I think Figuring that out is one of the joys of reading this story and any other story by George Saunders. George Saunders can be a little hard to get into for some people because he will just drop you in the middle of the action, and he uses a lot of words that he invents. He just comes up with words and you understand next to nothing of what's going on at first. He just drops you in the middle of the action. There's a lot of sci-fi elements or fantastical elements in his writing, and he just puts you in these like weird, uncanny situations, and you just feel like you have to take a while to just really get your footing. It takes a while, but it took me like maybe 2 pages of this short story to really understand what was going on, and sort of it's that. But that's the joy, It sounds like it's like a chore, but no, it actually is the joy of reading Saunders. He's constantly like when you're reading. I know I'm battling to speak coherently because I feel quite befuddled because I've just finished reading this, and it sort of feels like coming back down to reality, and talking can be hard afterwards. But the joy for me of reading any story by Saunders is he puts so many questions in your mind as a reader. And so you're like, there's like gears in your mind just shifting and just, clicking and trying to make sense of what's going on. And you start figuring some things out, but then some other questions come to mind, and he just keeps you thinking and going and feeling and wondering and reflecting. Wow. I mean, the way that George Saunders writes is just... It's just masterful. That's what it is. I know this video is like completely biased because I'm just like worshiping the man, but he deserves worshiping in my humble opinion. He deals in this particular story, Liberation Day, which I won't say what it's about, but he deals with what he usually writes about, which is power dynamics, inequality. Of course, there's some like social, economical things going on, slavery, capitalism, consumerism. There's this like twisted but beautiful idea of family, free will, poetry, language, music, art, history, money, and free will. So he's dealing with big ideas, big themes, and he does it in such a whimsical, fun, innovative, novel way. He comes up with some really crazy ideas, but everything makes sense because, humanity is so fucked up that this could happen. So I urge you to pick this book up and try the story Liberation Day. I will say that if you have read the Semplica Girl Diaries, which is another of his most famous short stories, well, it's actually quite a longer story by him. This story, Liberation Day, really felt like a companion or almost like a follow-up or a sequel, a spiritual sequel, let's call it, to the Semplica Girl Diaries. It sort of deals with a similar premise, or a kind of similar concept, but this just takes another turn. But he deals with the same issues but in very inventive ways. It's such a fun to read. It's such a delight to read. It's so sad and depressing, and also it's so funny. I could not stop laughing. But reading a George Saunders story is such a delight because you are constantly marveling at the language, just the specificity of the language and the way he has like crafted every single line of dialogue, but at the same time, you're not just looking at the language like intellectually, you're also feeling it on a visceral level. And it's so rare for authors to do those levels so well at the same time. A good example that comes to mind of someone who didn't do that is Stephen Markley in his novel Ohio, which is great. I found that Ohio worked really well in terms of feeling, but if I looked intellectually at the writing, I didn't like it. So there was like a disconnect for me between the experience, the visceral experience of reading it, and the intellectual, like looking at the language level of it, if that makes any sense. However, George Saunders is so completely masterful that he manages to do both of those levels perfectly right, perfectly balanced. You are enjoying and savoring the story, getting lost in it, getting completely immersed, but at the same time, you are intellectually fascinated by the miracle that is his writing. And also, you know, his writing is so great because it's not verbose or flowery. It's the opposite. It's just the right language for what he's trying to say and what he's trying to convey. He really shows us, the readers, how good writing is not about pretension or style or flair. It's more to do with the specificity and the clarity of the language, and it feels musical, it feels rhythmical. You can actually hear, like poetry, you can hear the sounds of the sentences, and there's like a musicality, a rhythm, a cadence to his writing. It's so unbelievable, the writing. Yeah, also I want to say, if you enjoy good sci-fi, like for example Ex Machina, that movie by Alex Garland, this is for you. Like, this is 100% for you. Also, if you enjoy the TV show Severance, which is my favorite show that I watched last year, this is a little bit like, well, it's a lot like Severance, but better. This is like Severance, but just on another level. And trust me, that's something, because Severance is my favorite show that I saw last year. But that's kind of what you can expect from this story, Liberation Day, except you have the bonus of the expertly crafted writing and the dialogue. So that's Liberation Day by George Saunders. I will come back when I finish reading the second story, which is The Mom of Bold Action. But so far, the first story, Liberation Day, is a 5 out of 5 stars experience. Just one of the best stories that I've ever read.